Let's get started. So can you all see the front screen? I'm guessing you probably can on the for the PowerPoint. So thanks so much for joining us today. Yeah, judging by some of the names, I can see a lot of people that I know. So thanks so much for joining. There are some names as well that I don't know. So thanks again as well for joining us. For the people that are new to FreeSearch, we are a go-to-market recruitment agency. We recruit for SaaS vendors in the United States. I have the absolute privilege in leading our product marketing recruitment function. So bringing people together is what we do. So we're running a series of webinars where product marketers can come together to share knowledge and learn from some of the very best in the space. So the overall topic today is using AI to win in crowded SaaS markets. Like it or not, AI is here to stay. And no doubt a lot of you will be wondering how you can use it to help you in your own roles. So I'm positive that you'll be able to take something away from this today. It's all being recorded as well. It's going to be sent out to you after in case you do miss anything. But yeah, with that in mind, I'd love to crack on and introduce the speakers for today. So, and I need a new picture just before we go any further. Chris, can you give us your background, please?
Certainly. Thanks for having me, Jason, and welcome to everybody. And that title is a little old from me for those on the call, but my name is Chris. I'm based here in New York City. I 2 decades technology and software guy. A majority of that has been in product marketing. About half the time in startups. I've seen successful exits as well as some failures, and some of that time at the big SaaS giants, namely Salesforce, which you see there, and Adobe. These days, I'm largely semi-retired from all of that world. I spend most of my time coaching entrepreneurs, help ideate, build, launch products, as well as do some teaching and mentoring in New York City high schools and public colleges. And AI is a big part of all of this because there are a lot of young people going into the world. So certainly passionate about product marketing and AI.
Thanks so much, Chris. Really excited to have you here as well. How about you, Rebecca? Great to get you on this call.
Hey everybody, I'm Rebecca. I run the product marketing function here at Mesh Payments. I have been also in the technology space from startup to Fortune 500 for the past, I won't tell you how many years, a lot of years. Everyone from eBay and PayPal to companies like Mesh to 3 people sitting in a room just getting things started and scaling to exit. So I've kind of run the gamut between kind of more traditional marketing, product management, and product marketing. And product marketing is really my sweet spot and where I like to be. And I'm my sweet spot is product marketing for companies that are scaling up to kind of to operationalize and make things scalable. So I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me, Jason.
Welcome. You're welcome. And last but not least, Arun.
Hi everyone. I'm Arun Lal. Been in this in technology space for over 20 years. I'll give you a quick rundown of my career. I actually trained as an architect, and I then learned how much architects got paid and quickly made the switch to computer science and technology. Since then, spent about 10 years at Microsoft in product management and product marketing across Dynamics CRM and Office 365. Then moved on to VMware, where I launched the VMware software-defined data center product. Spent close to 5 years there. Then went all into AI, started with a deep tech AI firm called Climate, which was trying to predict climate and set insurance premiums based on climate or changes in climate. And so did that. That company got acquired by Bayer and so on and so forth. After that, I started an AI company called Contique, which was in AI sales enablement. And then I spent some time at Productive, which was SaaS management, also had a very strong bent using AI and machine learning. And most recently spent some time at Culture and kind of helped the company reposition to an AI first employee experience platform. And I recently joined Docket, which is kind of doing exactly what Contique was doing ahead of its time. But I think Docket's the right place, doing the right thing. We're building the world's first AI sales engineer. So very excited to be here, and I run all marketing here. So that's my background in a nutshell.
Thank you for that, Arun, as well. I know you're going to definitely share some insights from Docket and Contique as well, which is going to be pretty fascinating, I would say. So yeah, I think let's sort of get started on our first topic really. So once again, if you've got any questions about anything that we're discussing in real time, just jump in and I can relay them to the team. So from my background, I speak to so many product marketers that face a bit of a relentless challenge, whether it's standing out in a sea of competitors or personalizing the customer journey, reaching out to the right audience segments. They're trying to do that whilst juggling with limited resources. So I think in the first section of our webinar, what I'd like to do is delve into the specific challenges that product marketers are facing, as I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of you. So on this note, I thought I'd start with you, Rebecca. If you can talk us through some of the issues and challenges that you face today and have faced in the past.
Sure, yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know what Mesh does, Mesh is a global travel and expense management solution with integrated corporate cards. So some of you probably have heard of some of our competitors, Brex, Ramp, right? So we play in a very crowded, very well-funded space. And it can be very, very challenging to stand out in that crowd. We are never going to have the budget of some of our peers, right? And so one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about is where am I going to have the most impact in the cycle, right? Is it about helping accelerate qualification and or is it about messaging and positioning, who we should be talking to at what time? Is it about ensuring that the sales team knows what to say about our product, the right thing to say to the right person at the right time, and then making sure that they have the ammo that they need about competitors, right? So I have a very small team, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about where my time is best spent, and that's a real challenge. And for us, differentiating against the competition is typically one of our biggest challenges, right? Because people are very familiar with our competitors. So I spent a lot of times using generative AI types of products to help accelerate the execution process. But for me, I think one of the things that I think is important before I even delve into something like AI is trying to figure out where I should be investing my time and effort. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face, especially at smaller companies, is how to identify where I'm going to make the biggest impact, or where I'm just helping somebody sound better in a channel where it's really maybe not going to make an impact. So those are some of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And how I'm going to get the information that I need, and synthesize it from a lot of different sources. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that, and particularly when it comes to competitive intelligence and how to help our sales team position against competitors at different parts in the sales cycle to different personas.
I mean, I'm hoping that some of Arun's chat a little bit later on is going to give you some insights, especially with Docket as well. Well, I think that Chris, from your experience, obviously you've been working at Salesforce, that you were in I suppose a much bigger environment than Rebecca. So how about you? Can you what sort of challenges would you face there, sort of hurdles?
I mean, whether large or small, the challenges tend to be similar. One, Rebecca touched on it. In one case, you may have less resources, but with the less resources and small, you tend to also allowed to be more agile than the bureaucracy and hierarchy that will come with a larger company, even if you have bigger budgets and larger teams. So I think honestly, much of the biggest challenge that exists in 2024 or in recent years, honestly, if you think about how we get stuff out in market, what are we facing, right? There's overwhelming posts in LinkedIn. There's websites that all sound the same, and often they say a lot without saying anything at all. Then you have sales keynotes, messages that all promise that your solution is the one true solution that connects all the other solutions and will delight your customer and innovate in transformative ways, even if your solution is just payroll software. So in that world, we've created this noise, and it's entirely honestly of our own creation. Like, and when I say our own, not just product marketing, but the whole technology and software ecosystem. But there's no escaping it. There's no easy way to change the rules or stand out from others. So what do? In my mind, there's two things that you primarily do. There's the best practice stuff, which is optimize your funnel tactically, refine regularly, do the basics and do it well, and optimize and measure and change as you need to. This is not rocket science. It's just doing your job and doing it well each and every day along with your team. The second part is where you get to be slightly more innovative and start to use the tactics and innovations that may exist that ultimately allow you to define your brand. Now, some people might call it brand marketing, but it's more than that. It's much more about letting the market have a perception as to who you are and what your product is before others will define it for you, and they will. Whether it's your competitors, whether it's a category, whether it's analysts, press, they'll find it for you if you don't do it first. And that's where a lot of the innovation comes. That's where you can be far more creative. Again, there may be tactics that you have to do here that might make you cringe personally, but you need to do them. It is the rules of the road, and that's what we need to do. And that's ultimately how I think about getting not lost in the noise that exists in our world, and ultimately the challenge that we face today.
Thank you so much. And Arun, what about you? Similar sort of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give two stories, one from Productive and one from Docket, actually more recently. So at Productive, we were in the SaaS management space, and like 3 years ago, there was a SaaS management vendor that was appearing every 2 weeks. So we had close to 40, 50 competitors, some based out of like low-cost geographies like Israel or India, and everybody saying the same things. So and we were seeing a lot of impact with that. I mean, none of our top of the funnel was working very efficiently because the keywords keep getting more and more expensive, and we were all bidding on the same keywords. So that strategy stopped working. From an SEO perspective, we would rank like number 1 or number 2 on a certain keyword, and then 2 weeks later we would find ourselves being in position 10 or 11. So we would lose a lot of organic traffic as a result. And then we also saw the impact in our sales funnel where the win rates would go down, and we would find that for the same customer, there would be 5 vendors pitching similarly and price cutting each other. So these were some of the problems we kind of observed. So the way we came around that was through, I think, essentially, there's really just one big solution to the problem, and that's you've got to deposition all your competition. So basically, you've got to redefine the boundaries of the market, and that's the most effective way I've seen work when you're in a situation like that. So I'll give you an example of what we did at Productive. At Productive, everybody was claiming we're the best SaaS management vendor, we have the best reports, we have the best spend detection, and so on and so forth. So really what the work I did was to go deep and understanding what our differentiation was. So really, you've got to up-level what our differentiation is and make sure that differentiation really matters to your ICP, your ideal customer profile. So we, in fact, then going deep into our differentiation, which was really around the granularity of data we collected and then how we made the data ready for machine learning, I came up with this whole notion of calling ourselves the SaaS intelligence platform. So we basically said, hey, the whole world, the 50 vendors are all doing SaaS management. Productive is the only SaaS intelligence platform. And we kind of redefined the use cases that you could open up with SaaS intelligence. So for example, at the CIO level, you could do things like, hey, how much am I spending per employee in marketing? Or how much am I spending per employee for sales? And what are the apps that compose the stack for these functions? And what are the right benchmarks? And so we enabled a whole set of use cases and a whole set of new dashboards. So we completely recontextualized the product. We worked very closely with our customers. Before we went into this repositioning ourselves as a SaaS intelligence platform, We talked to a lot of CIOs. We kind of rejiggered the pitch, and that started to resonate very strongly. We positioned it as the SaaS intelligence movement. We got some CIOs to be part of the movement, and we created a hashtag around it, and we got a lot of customer momentum around it as well. So we said these CIOs are essentially the champions of the SaaS intelligence movement. SaaS management is just a thing that you do and doesn't even lead to the outcomes that you're looking for. So we've also strengthened the relationship between our capabilities and the business outcomes that our ICP could achieve. So that's one example. Similar problem I'm facing at Docket as well, and we're still early into it, but I'll talk about that story as well. So we've got Guru at one end, we've got Glean at one end, which are very generic, like AI search engines kind of things, and then we've got ChatGPT or OpenAI as well as a competitor to some extent, because you can essentially put in a bunch of docs and you can ask it questions and things like that. So we were like, okay, how do we differentiate to Docket in this very crowded space? So we came up with this whole positioning around, and we didn't want, and if you look at the space, there are lots of knowledge assistants out there. So our value proposition is to help the sales AE, the salesperson, with the right knowledge, with the right document RFI, RFP generation capabilities, as well as kind of learning from their team. So when we looked at all of that, one area we identified, which was a gap and nobody was really filling that gap, was this positioning around the AI sales engineer. There were a lot of people claiming to be AI co-pilots and AI knowledge assistants. But when we looked at our value proposition and the way we help the sales engineer, the way we help the AE, it's very similar to what an SC does or a sales engineer does. So we took that positioning and we were running with it hard. And that puts us in a very differentiated place and kind of helps us deposition the competition. A lot of people are building knowledge assistants and co-pilots with generic information, but we're the world's first AI sales engineer. So those are two examples of how you can differentiate yourself in very crowded spaces.
I have a similar story actually to Arun's first story about depositioning, right? So I was running marketing for a startup called Bodala, which was a benchmarking. We did AI backed benchmarking basically for corporate legal rates, right, for outside counsel. So we help people optimize their outside counsel rates and save money. And one of the things, legal is a very old school space, right? A lot of relationship driven. People see their outside counsel as their partner, and cost is not always something that is considered, right? So we moved away from some of the original positioning that we had been speaking to, and because after COVID, people were being asked to cut back in crazy ways, right? And we repositioned around running legal like a business, right? And being more of a business partner, and providing actionable insights for them, actually completely for free, and then relying on their sense of FOMO, right? General counsels, all these lawyers are extremely competitive. So, is Coca-Cola getting a better rate than me, right? Then is Pepsi getting a better rate than me if I'm at Coca-Cola? And it was extremely powerful, right? People really wanted to have an impact on the business, especially in places where rates were being commoditized. And that really hit home with people in a way that was made them actually move, right, and do things and want to save money for the business, where in the past it'd been kind of thought about as a sunk cost. And that was probably one of the most powerful things that we did as a business, and really helped us ramp revenue really, really quickly, and ultimately exit.
Amazing. Me, I'll ask a question. Did you feel like you covered that, Arun, or do you think you could elaborate a bit more on how you redefine the market? Thanks, Meenal.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about it. See, redefinition of the market has to be done in the context of your ICP. So, for example, what we identified from Productive's insight was the economic buyer was essentially the VP of IT or the CIO. And what the problems that the CIOs were trying to solve were very different from what other SaaS management vendors were like solving for. Most of them were solving for shadow IT detection or procurement or just kind of keeping keeping track of what apps there were in a company. The CIO was looking for very different things, and they were really looking for like insights around how much am I spending per employee? What is the ideal app stack that I need to make my employees most productive? They were looking for what is the right employee experience that drives improvement in business outcomes. So they were trying to answer a very different set of questions. And then we said, hey, we are going to recontextualize the market based on solving those specific problems that the CIO had. And that's what kind of helped recontextualize the market. I'll give you one more example in terms of this is at Culture Amp. Culture Amp is in the employee experience HR tech space. And if you look at the entire HR tech space, there are essentially two groups of vendors. You've got the HRIS systems like Rippling and now Deal and Lattice. Everybody's trying to become an HRIS system. And then you've got a group of vendors that are all about analytics and AI and some sort of insights about some aspect of the employee journey or some aspect of HR. So you've got a bunch of HR analytics and predictive platforms and AI platforms. However, if you look from as a chief CHRO perspective, the business problem they're trying to solve most urgently is, especially in this context, is how do I get the best performance out of my existing people? Because the number of people are getting smaller and the cost of hiring is very high, and they want to maximize the performance of the teams that they already have. So what we did at Culture Amp is, again, recontextualize the market where we positioned ourselves as, Culture Amp is an AI-driven platform that provides insights on how you get more return out of your people investment, or how do you provide the leadership insights that help you drive higher performance out of your existing employees. When you recontextualize the market based on that, we got very strong traction from the CHRO group because they started driving the purchase, and as a result, we could drive more sales as a result and more differentiation in the market.
Great. Great. Well, just moving on now to I suppose the second section here. Thanks so much for all your answers, and thanks for the question. I mean, I appreciate that. So we've unpacked the current challenges facing product marketers in the SaaS landscape. Let's try and shift a little bit from problems to possibilities as well. And how we can incorporate specific AI-powered strategies and solutions that can be implemented to revolutionize PMM and your approach. So Chris, I think I'll start with you on this bit, if that's all right. Like where in the PMM function do you see AI being implemented to the most success?
I mean, thanks, Jason. The obvious ways are the dynamic messaging type stuff because it's low-hanging fruit. Things like you do with email and SMS, and not just externally. It's important internally with things that running sales enablement and other internal type of marketing programs. Ad creative optimization, of course. Additionally, with the way you analyze performance and making recommendations on decisions of where to spend budget, money, how to do messaging, etc. And certainly, I think Rebecca touched on this. It can help with the efficiency of research on market and pricing, competitor research, and whatnot, and certainly with brainstorming sessions around things like messaging. I think the other bit of low-hanging fruit largely relays around automation, like for approvals, project management, up the chain, down the chain, daily reporting, KPI alignment across teams, pre-reads before meetings, transcriptions post meetings. There's so many things in all of that ultimately are just low-hanging fruit that AI can take over or partially take over, that just stops humans spending time on things that don't really add too much value but are necessary work to get the job done. Once you go beyond that low-hanging fruit, that is sort of the open canvas, and it's somewhat a open canvas based on where technology is going and how good and accurate and trustworthy it is, as well as human ingenuity to work with it. And so this is where the product marketer can be quite innovative in terms of what they do, but it's also a little bit unknown because there's a lot of trust. And I always say, like, something else, if something goes out, are you okay with that thing going out with your eyes on it? When are you okay with it going without your eyes? Where it's shown some trust, where it's put out things constantly or optimized a program and it's done it well over time, so now you're okay with it running without your intervention. If your C-suite has eyes on it, are you okay with that having an approval step? If there's a macro event that's going on that may be negative, or a press launch with it, are you okay with it happening? That's where there's a little bit of unknown, because human beings do need to augment at that point what AI can do. But with the low-hanging fruit, there's so much to be gained already, and many people are just doing this already naturally. And I think that's where the greatest value is today.
And this one's to Rebecca with regards to, I suppose, considering AI products as well. Like, and I think, Mina, thanks for the question again. You asked a similar question here. What kind of data needs to be collected in early days, which can leverage AI for better / tighter alignment with product market fit? Are there any tools in the market that do this well? So I'll ask you, Rebecca, on maybe tools that you've looked at, that you've considered. Have you come across any similar to what Minal's mentioned, or you're looking at them for a different purpose?
So for me right now, one of the biggest challenges, and actually, Arun, I owe your team a call back. But one of the biggest challenges for me is making sure that so for us, we're not necessarily having a problem with pipeline or with getting people the ICP that we want into an opportunity. For us, the biggest challenge has been how do you unseat a age-old competitor, right? And then how do you identify what the other up-and-coming tools in the market can actually do, and provide them with the right information, right, and the right approach to giving that information to the prospect, right? So, for us, a big part of it is, everyone says that their product does exactly the same thing, and basically more or less. And the reality is that, the differentiators that we have are, they might seem small, but the impact is big, right? So it's hard to, and it's about really the reality of what these products can do, and making sure that not just telling people about what they can do, but creating a talk track or even an asset, right, that they can send on that will help them actually validate that what you're saying is correct and true, right? Not take my word for it, right? Like, don't take my word for it. Go find out for yourself, right? And so a big part of what I'm trying to do is trying to pull together the right information. So finding the right competitive information is tough in the first place. But I think then making sure that my team has the right competitive information and the right talk track assets, et cetera, for different people at different points in the sales cycle has been one of the biggest challenges. So for me, I'm really doing that a lot myself. And in fact, we don't have a sales engineer, so I actually end up joining a lot of calls, right, to provide that kind of validation, et cetera. And I've put together a lot of assets that are helpful for the sales team, right, and saying, here's what you can ask the competitor. Ask them this question. Show me how you do this, right? As opposed to saying they can't do that. Here's how we do it, right? It also just, I think it gives gives them some ammo internally to say, oh, well, this is the real live use case that actually is going to be a problem for me that I care about, right? And has an impact for me. So for me, that's been the biggest challenge. And so I recently implemented a CI tool that people are really liking, and is pulling the information actually into the place. It's conditionally pulling information based on the deal, based on who they're talking to, right, and presenting it to them, within the context of Salesforce, in a couple other systems as well. And that's
which platform is that? Sorry.
Crayon.
Crayon.
Yeah, so I've been using Crayon. There's kind of two leaders in the space, and Crayon and Clue for anybody who wants to go evaluate them. but that's been extremely helpful. I just sat through QBRs where people were like, wow, it's so helpful to have the information that I need here in front of me, right? One guy who crushed his quota 167%, right? And he was like, this was such a huge win for me because I had all the information that I needed at the time that I needed it. Because the market's changing so quickly, right? So even if I wasn't there to run a session or my team wasn't there to update everyone, they had it right in front of them. So I think, making sure that they have the information, and that they're pulling it from a lot of different places and that it's then packaged up in a way that actually is impactful. I think that's one of the hardest challenges. And I think, tools like concepts like what Arun's company is doing, right, are really interesting to me, because it helps automate that in more depth. So there's a lot of tools actually that are doing this at kind of more top of the funnel, right? Like our sales development team is demoing a product called Actively, which is helping them to basically, what's the right message? What are the problems that this ICP is having? Making sure that they have all the information, and helps them write emails, right? It's helping them do all of that kind of stuff to optimize that process at the top of the funnel, or top of the sales funnel, I should say. But it just is not as robust down at the bottom of the funnel yet. Like, everything is at the top of the funnel. There's a million things that you can get for AI, right? Millions and millions. And I'm sure some of them are great and some of them are probably crappy. But at the lower part of the funnel is where it gets more challenging, I think. And so, that's why I think, having these tools that help present information in the right way, in context for your salespeople, because they're never going to open the other thing. They're never going to look at the piece of paper like I love my team. They're great, but that's just sales. There's nothing you can do about it. So you got to show them stuff, in context. So I think that, if you can do that, even if it's, packed together, it's effective, right? It really can help.
Great. And then, I'll be rude not to ask you about Docket in a bit more detail, Arun, given you've just started there and it's very relevant to what we're talking about.
No, it's absolutely true, and completely agree with Rebecca. I mean, I think there's tons of tools top of the funnel, but really middle and bottom of the funnel is the problem. And the way we, a lot of sellers experience this problem is, number one, let's say you're getting ready for a meeting and you need to address some buyer questions or buyer objections, or they've sent you a bunch of questions that you need to respond to. A lot of sellers can't find the right information, up to date, complete, consistent information. So that's one big problem we find, that the accurate, nuanced talk tracks and information that they need to respond to buyers is missing. That's one problem that we consistently see with sellers. The second problem we see is that a lot of sellers get a lot of RFPs and RFIs, and responding to them can be a very long and complicated and manually laborious process. And the third problem
is neck deep in that right now.
Totally get on Docket. And the third problem we see with a lot of sellers is, if you're a new seller, there's this notion of tribal knowledge. There's always the 10% of the sellers who are crushing their quota, and you're always wondering, what are these guys doing different? What are their processes? How do they present themselves to buyers? What kind of communication style do they use? What kind of strategies they use that their win rates are so high? So these are the three problems that a lot of sellers face, and this is exactly what Docket addresses. The first thing it does is it provides instant, accurate, and nuanced answers for buyer objections and buyer questions, all sourced from within your enterprise knowledge. Essentially, all the information that's existing in the documents that you've produced. Even so, Docket integrates with your Slack, and if there's a question that's been answered on Slack, it uses that as a resource, and there's a whole workflow around verifying it and confirming it and improving the confidence score, things like that. So that becomes a massive source of knowledge for sellers that they can instantly use and get value from. The second thing Docket provides is it allows you to fill out RFPs and RFIs. You drag and drop the RFP and it produces an output or a response for it. And it provides not only the answers, it also provides the sources where the answers came from, and you can verify them and you can validate them. Also provides a confidence score for every answer. So you can see maybe if you want to do some extra work on top, you can do that. And the third and the most important thing Docket does is it provides insights from your top sellers on how they're pitching to their buyers. It actually goes and identifies the gong snippet where when a top seller responded to a buyer objection, and you can watch that clip. You can see the response to an answer from a call script, and you can see how a top seller responds to an answer, and you can learn from it. So this is very beneficial for if you're a new seller in a company, to kind of learn from the top performers, and you can unlock a lot of these winning insights. So that's what the Docket platform unlocks, and it's all built on top of your enterprise, what we call the enterprise sales knowledge lake, which is essentially all the sales nuggets or the winning insights from your company. It's like the combined knowledge of how you win deals that's accumulated over time across all the sellers. And it integrates with Slack and Google Drive and Teams and Salesforce, all these systems to kind of aggregate and structure the knowledge and make it available for every seller. So yeah, so that's what Docket's doing, and I think I think that's the only sort of complete and more satisfactory solution I saw in the market, and that made me kind of get excited about joining as well.
Amazing. Any discount codes for people who are here today?
Just mention my name.
Rebecca.
Yeah, mention my name. We'll make sure you get a nice discount.
Great. All right. Well, yeah. Moving on. Where does the time go? This is the sort of penultimate section here before we get into some Q&A. So yeah, before you fully embrace this new technology, I suppose it's crucial that you understand its strengths and its weaknesses. So I think we'll try and take a balanced approach here. We can examine some pros, cons of using AI in product marketing. I'm keen for the panel really to discuss the benefits AI offers, but delve into the potential drawbacks here as well. There's a risk of bias, and I suppose the importance of maintaining human oversight is really important as well. So by the end of this section, you'll gain a comprehensive understanding of the AI landscape. I think, Chris, we've discussed this before, so I'd love to start with you on this one, around the challenges that PMMs may face by implementing AI. So I'd love to get your take on some pros and some cons.
Yeah, I mean, like every good tool, technology, or innovation that's ever come before, and AI is just one, and an AI is sort of an umbrella term for lots of different things that have been discussed by both Rebecca and Arun. It ultimately enhances your abilities and makes things more efficient relative to what the current status quo is. So for a PMM, how does it help with your messaging, pricing, competitive research? We talked about RFP, sales enablement, launches, presentations. Ultimately, that is the pro of AI, and particularly AI for product marketing. When you start to think about the cons, is where you think that same tool or technology can replace things that otherwise need human oversight. You mentioned, Jason, in your question a little bit about bias. Like, am I concerned about it? The short answer is yes, but the longer answer is that if you're doing your job properly and doing your diligence, it really shouldn't be an issue, because ultimately, if AI is optimizing, say, ad creative and ad campaigns, right, and they're optimizing it from a library of creative imagery and copy, at some point, a human being should have approved all of that visual creative in whatever form it is, video, static, and all of the written copy. So therefore, if AI is joining combinations of things together, it's doing it with something that has been pre-approved. AI is just deciding at any given point in time which particular creative combination might be the most valuable to optimize the funnel and increase the conversion rate. Should there also be things like, the universal pause button? A negative macro event happens, say a global tragedy or something, and you do not want your ads, messaging, anything to sound tone deaf around something like that. Should there be a pause? Is that something that a human being should be involved with in some form? Absolutely. So ultimately, the concerns that exist with AI ultimately come back to how the human or the product marketer decides to use it and where you are inserting yourself in the process. And as long as you're doing that fine, AI will only enhance your abilities and make things more efficient for you.
Go on, Rebecca.
So one of my biggest concerns is language. right? So I work with people who have heavy accents. A lot of them have heavy accents, poor grammar, and and use words incorrectly, right? It's fine for me, like we can understand, right? Because I'm a human, and I've been working with them for a while. But if I look at, like, let's say we use Chorus, right, for kind of some sales, to record all the sales calls. If I look at the transcription, which is AI driven, right, it is very inaccurate, right? And it can make things very confusing, right? So I think that like Chris's point is well taken, right? That putting a human in the loop is really important, right, in AI, whether it's before or after. And I think each use case kind of has a different, will have a different place, perhaps, where it might be most effective to put the human in the loop, right? In Chris's case, right, beforehand, everything's pre-approved, right? And sometimes for, like, let's say competitive intel, it might be after, because it hasn't, it has to synthesize and then integrate, the information, right? And so you might want to read it and make sure. That would be one of my bigger concerns is it conflating what my product does with what another product does, and things like that, which my team people already do, because there's a lot of similarities. So I think that where you put the human in the loop is also something that's important to think about.
Great question, Stephen, by the way, and I will come on to that because I've got that written down as a question as well towards the end. So just bear with me on that one. How about you, Arun? Because you're clearly a big advocate for AI. You've worked on plenty of different AI products. You've done a lot of due diligence at Docker. So yeah, what does the future look like to you? And is there any sort of cause for concern?
Yeah, there is cause for concern. The concern right now is really around this notion of hallucination, like how accurate are your answers? So, the getting to 90% accuracy, you'll find that a lot of tools can get there. And getting from 90 to 95% accuracy in answers requires a lot of context, a lot of fine tuning, a lot of manual intervention, especially. So this is in the Docket's context, what we were noticing was that even OpenAI was getting to 85 to 90% accuracy in answers. But what Docket has invested in is really truly understanding the context, the sales context, like what deal is the seller working on? What product is this company selling? For example, there's I'll give you a very interesting example of a hallucination. There was a company that was selling to restaurants. And there was a Slack discussion where two people were talking about restaurants. And based on some of our generic models, we identified this as, hey, this is not relevant sales conversation. Although it was, because they were actually talking about a customer and kind of sharpening their ICP. So these are the sort of the nuanced things that, if you add the context, those are the things that you need to work on and kind of fine tune your model to get to. So with Docket, you get to 95% plus accuracy. So actually, we've guaranteed 2.7% hallucination only at the maximum level. So you're getting anywhere from 95 to 97% accuracy with a lot of the work that we're doing around fine-tuning the context of the conversation for a specific company. So yeah, so that's a big concern, and getting to accurate answers is very important for sellers. Things change so fast, and so accuracy matters, and doing the extra work and the contextualization really is the big challenge a lot of companies are facing.
Great. Do you want to add to that, Rebecca?
I was going to say I can speak to Stephen's question because I have my security team, right? Our CISO is all over us, right? They shut down Gemini and access to ChatGPT, right? For our through our we're signed in on Chrome with our our Google Workspace. They've shut it all down, and they basically told us we cannot use those tools, even if it's just to help us with writing emails and things like that. Because when you add things to the public cloud, right, to public data lake, things can be very things can get dicey. So I think one of the things that you want to just make sure you're cognizant of is whether you're using a private data lake, right, and how much your data is being segmented from other people's data, right? So if I'm using Arun's service, right, it's just looking at, hopefully just looking at my data, right? Versus if I'm going into ChatGPT, it's like anything anyone has ever entered into this, right? Plus everything on the internet, right? So, I think that's one of the things that you just want to be aware of, because it could be compromising in a variety of ways for your company, right? So I have I'm sure that there are many webinars and videos about why this is so. That from people who are more experts in the engineering of security and cyber risk, but it's definitely a problem.
It's a common question actually that that popped up a few times when I to some attendees. So one of Muzamil, a guy who can't actually make it, has asked me pretty much the same question as you, Stephen. So yeah, super relevant. Well, we've explored the challenges. We've looked at AI-powered solutions, navigated some of the pros and cons of this technology. I think final section now, just ask some questions, and I'm probably going to go first if you don't mind. I know that Julie Wade, who's in the chat as well, she dropped me an email beforehand just to talk about how would one go about getting stakeholder / leadership buy-in in order to adopt AI solutions or work towards AI based strategies. Who wants to answer that?
The question, sorry, just to clarify, Jason, the question is how you as a product marketer would get your senior leadership's buy-in to use that AI tool in your company?
Yeah,
that was the question?
Exactly. Or adopt it.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously differs depending on the culture and nature of who this leadership is and who the ultimate approver is. And it also probably tend to differ if you're talking about doing this in a large company, a public company versus a smaller one, that will tend to be more innovative and slightly less rigorous or bureaucratic about that type of decision making. But by and large, it's twofold. And we just talked about AI security. It is, what is the answer to those important questions around data security, data privacy, all the various certifications the technology has. So the true due diligence questions. And if those are answered succinctly and they meet the requirements of your organization, because you kind of need that first before anything can happen, then you go to the second, well, what's it actually going to do? Like, what is the value add here? Are we talking about saving 20% of salespeople's time? Are we talking about campaign improvement by 10%? Are we talking about getting faster launches because of this? And your ability to present that value add, just like if you were telling a customer story about how someone uses your solution and they've seen 30% lift, $1 million extra revenue, whatever the promise is, you're basically painting that picture story. So a product marketer story, basically. But that first part needs to be done first to the context that your company requires those things. And then you can then paint the vision story as to what the value add is.
I want to just, I'll mention something that you might just want to consider. So if it is an enterprise product, right, where you need to have your data to actually train the model, right, POCs can be completely pointless. So just be careful in that if you're thinking about, oh, well, let me just prove the value by doing a little POC, right? AI requires training. So, and that may not be something that your company wants to, A, expose the data to do, right? Or B, will just allow you to do it, or you have the time, right, to invest in the actual training. So I think something just to consider when you're thinking about whether or not, oh, let's just do a POC and I can prove the value quickly, right? Maybe more complicated than
that. Please keep coming with the questions. I do have. Oh, there you go. This one is for Arun. What are the key factors to consider when selecting an AI partner?
Chloe, in what context are we talking an AI partner? Is in the GTM context, or Like, do you want to build some custom models? Can you give me a little bit of insight? Okay, in that case, if there's no, I'll just try to answer it more generically. I mean, yeah, the first thing is data. I think data security is like one of the most important things. Like, is the partner going to be like keeping your data secure? For example, do they have, you know, the SOC 1, SOC 2 compliance? Those kind of things are very important. If you're looking at a GTM kind of a use case, then I mean, then just looking at, do they have the right technology to support your use case is going to be very important. And then having a very clear idea of what outcome you're trying to achieve, and is your AI partner sort of an expert in helping you achieve that outcome is going to be the third consideration. So I can only give you that much depth based on not knowing what the use case or the intent is, but I would say security, you know, ability to deliver outcomes, and the team expertise is going to be pretty important.
Right. Anyone else want to pipe up? Ask a question. Oh, okay. Well, I think that's that. I just really want to say thanks so much for coming. That's all we've got time for, and yeah, I just want to say a big thanks to you first, Arun. Next on to you, Rebecca, and yeah, to you as well, Chris. So thanks so much. We will have another couple of webinars lined up with some great speakers as well. So keep your eyes out, and I'll send you some more updates. But you'll get this email to you as well. Thanks so much. See you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys.